Watch Adam Schiff start to malfunction after Pam Bondi humiliate him to his face in Congress.
The president has said Jack Smith should go to jail. Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't seen the file. I haven't seen the investigation. I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything without, you're a long practicing attorney, without looking at a file.
So you would need a factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case. You know,
and sitting here today,
Senator, 72% of Americans
please, I only have
have
7
lost
minutes.
faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Sitting here today, yes or no?
Senator, I will look at the facts and the circumstances.
You can't answer that question. You're not a part of the department yet. There's no worry about divulging law enforcement sensitive information. So just tell us, are you aware? Just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news is
horrible. Are you aware of a?
Do I know if he committed a crime? I have not looked.
You seem reluctant to answer a simple question. Let me ask you a different simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that question.
No, it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one has asked me to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a hypothetical.
The president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president has
We're also worried about Liz Cheney, Senator.
The president has called for this.
You know what we should be worried about?
Ms. Bondi, please answer my questions.
The crime rate in California right now is through the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
your robberies are 87% higher than the national average.
My question is this.
That's what I want to be focused on, Senator.
Do you have the power to say no to the president? And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't have the independence to say no to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It also requires you, if you're going to be a good attorney general, to be able to tell hard truths to the president. So my questions now are, can you tell hard truths to the president? So let me start with an easy truth that you could speak to the president. Can you tell us, can you tell him that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? Can you say that? Do you have the independence to say that? Do you have the gravitas, the stature, the intestinal fortitude to say, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election? Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I won't do it. I won't play politics with any ongoing investigation.
So let me ask you another.
Like you did leaking your colleague Devin Nunes's memo.
If you can't answer the question, let me ask you a different, what should be a simple truth, not a hard one. Was there massive fraud affecting the result of the 2020 election, yes or no?
Senator, I'm glad you asked that question, if you'll let me answer what I saw in Pennsylvania.
No, I asked a simple question about massive fraud.
I can only tell you what I saw in Pennsylvania.
I know you want to answer a different question, but my question is, can you tell us whether there was massive fraud affecting the results of the 2020 election, yes or no? Was there or was there not?
I can tell you what I saw when I went as an advocate to the campaign.
That's not my question. So you can't answer that question. You can't speak that even easy truth to us, let alone to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It will also be important that you give good advice to the president. Are you prepared to advise the president not to pardon people who beat police officers?
Senator, as I said, the pardons are at the direction of the president. We will look and we will advise. I will look at every case on a case. Let me finish. On a case-by-case basis.
Okay, good.
And I abhor violence to police officers.
Follow up with that. So will it be your advice to the president, Mr. President, I know you said you want to issue hundreds of pardons on day one. Will it be your advice to the president? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis. Do not issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the president?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
and will you be able to do? Will you be able to review hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am
Of course
asked
you
to
won't.
look
So
at.
will you advise the
Heck,
president?
can I
will
answer
you-
the question?
Well, my question
I
is,
would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
you'll be able to review
Listen, I'm
hundreds
not
of
going to
cases on the first
mislead
day?
this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask
You were
another question.
censured by
It will
Congress,
also-
Senator, for
it will
comments just
also-
like this that
it
are
will
so reckless.
It will also be important for you to be able to preserve the records, the evidence of the department. Are you ready to commit that none of the evidence in the January 6th investigation will be destroyed under your watch?
Senator, I will follow the law. I will consult with ethical officials in the
Do you
department.
see any ethical basis to destroy evidence in the January 6th investigation? Then why can't you answer the question? Why can't you say, I commit to this committee, we will never destroy the evidence in the January 6th investigation? Why can't you give this committee and the American people that assurance?
Are you frightened because evidence was destroyed against President Trump that was false? Is that why you're frightened now? I can't believe this is even.
Why do you have difficulty answering that question?
I can't believe you're asking such a question.
Why do you have difficulty promising to preserve evidence at the Department of Justice? Why is that a difficult question?
I will follow the law.
It shouldn't be a difficult question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, I know that you are pleased that we are moving to the end of round one, and we appreciate your being here.
Before we get into this, hit that subscribe button because this hearing turned into something much bigger than just one confirmation exchange. What started as Adam Schiff trying to corner Pam Bondi quickly became a perfect example of why so many Americans have completely lost trust in Washington hearings altogether. If there was ever a perfect example of modern political theater in Congress, this was it. From the very beginning, you could tell exactly what Adam Schiff was trying to do. This was never really about learning how Bondi would run the Justice Department. It wasn't about understanding her legal philosophy. It wasn't about hearing her plans for crime, border enforcement, fentanyl trafficking, or public safety. The entire strategy was built around forcing her into a political trap that could generate headlines and viral clips. That was the real objective. Schiff wanted a dramatic moment where Bondi either contradicted Donald Trump publicly or gave Democrats ammunition to claim she would blindly follow him. Every question was designed around that goal. Jack Smith, Liz Cheney, 2020, January 6 pardons. The questions were structured less like oversight and more like a cable news prosecutor trying to manufacture a gotcha moment. But Bondi never gave him what he wanted, and that's what clearly frustrated Schiff throughout the exchange. Notice how many times Bondi returned to the same basic principle. She said she hadn't reviewed files. She said she hadn't examined evidence. She said she wasn't going to make legal determinations from a Senate hearing room based on political talking points or media narratives. Whether you agree with her politically or not, that's actually the responsible answer for someone preparing to oversee the Justice Department. Imagine the alternative for a second. Imagine if Bondi had sat there promising investigations into Trump's enemies before reviewing evidence. Democrats and the media would have immediately accused her of weaponizing the DOJ. They would have compared her to authoritarian governments. Every network would have spent days running segments about political retaliation. But because she refused to prejudge investigations publicly, Schiff tried to frame that restraint as weakness or lack of independence. That's the contradiction voters notice immediately, and honestly, the more Schiff pushed, the more obvious the political nature of the hearing became. He kept demanding yes or no answers to incredibly loaded legal and political questions because nuance wouldn't serve his purpose. He wasn't looking for legal precision. He wanted soundbites simple enough for social media clips and primetime television. That's why every time Bondi tried to add context, Schiff interrupted her or redirected the question. The performance depended on controlling the framing. At one point, Bondi shifted the conversation toward crime in California, and that moment was revealing. Schiff clearly did not want the conversation moving toward real-world issues affecting ordinary Americans because the hearing was designed to stay locked on Trump-related narratives. But Bondi bringing up violent crime, robberies, and public safety cut through the political script for a moment. And that's important because this is part of a much larger national frustration. A lot of Americans look at Washington today and feel like politicians spend more time obsessing over media narratives than solving actual problems. Families are dealing with inflation. Cities are struggling with crime. Communities are overwhelmed by fentanyl deaths and border concerns. Housing costs are crushing people. Yet hearing after hearing turns into another Trump-centered political spectacle. For many voters, that's exhausting. Another thing that stood out was Schiff's repeated attempt to portray Bondi as lacking independence, while simultaneously demanding she publicly denounce Trump in a confirmation hearing. Think about the contradiction there. Schiff was essentially demanding a televised declaration designed to satisfy political audiences rather than focusing on how she would actually govern as Attorney General. And Americans have watched this pattern repeat itself for years now. Every Republican nominee eventually faces the same script. Democrats ask the same questions in slightly different forms over and over until they either get the exact answer they want or claim the witness is dangerous for refusing to comply. If the nominee stays disciplined, they're accused of evasion. If they answer directly but imperfectly, they're accused of extremism. The outcome is usually predetermined before the hearing even begins. That's one reason public trust in these institutions keeps collapsing. People don't see many of these hearings as genuine oversight anymore. They see scripted partisan warfare designed for fundraising emails and cable television clips. Senators walk in with speeches already written. Media outlets already know which clips they'll highlight before the hearing is even over. Everyone plays their role, and that's exactly why this exchange resonated with so many conservatives afterward. To them, Bondi looked calm while Schiff looked increasingly agitated that he couldn't land the knockout moment he wanted. The more he repeated the questions, the more it felt like he was trying to force a conclusion instead of uncovering facts. The 2020 election section especially revealed the political strategy behind the questioning. Schiff wanted a clean, simple declaration because he knew how useful that clip would be publicly. Bondi instead tried to explain her own observations and avoided stepping into a simplistic binary answer during a politically explosive hearing. Now critics will obviously say she should have answered more directly. Supporters will argue she was being cautious and disciplined. But regardless of where people fall politically, it's impossible not to notice that Schiff's questioning was designed more for political positioning than legal analysis. And then came the pardon discussion. Schiff tried to push Bondi into preemptively rejecting broad January 6 pardons without reviewing individual cases. Bondi responded that she would evaluate cases individually and review files before advising the president. Again, that's the type of answer you'd normally expect from someone discussing legal matters responsibly, but because it wasn't politically satisfying, Schiff kept pressing harder. What makes this exchange even more interesting is the broader context surrounding public distrust in federal institutions right now. After years of investigations, leaks, partisan media battles, and conflicting narratives, millions of Americans no longer automatically trust claims coming from Washington insiders. They are skeptical of both parties. They are skeptical of federal agencies. And they are especially skeptical when politicians appear more focused on scoring political points than addressing national problems. That's why moments like this carry weight far beyond the hearing room itself. For conservatives watching, Bondi represented resistance to what they see as the politicization of the justice system. For Democrats, Schiff represented accountability and institutional defense. But for many independents watching from the outside, the entire exchange probably reinforced how deeply divided and performative Washington has become. And there's another layer here people shouldn't ignore. Schiff spent years at the center of some of the most high-profile anti-Trump investigations and media narratives in American politics. Because of that history, a lot of Republicans and independents simply don't view him as a neutral figure anymore. Whether fair or unfair, many Americans hear Schiff lecture about truth and abuse of power and immediately think back to years of dramatic television appearances promising explosive revelations that never fully match the rhetoric. That history changes how exchanges like this are perceived. Bondi also understood something important throughout the hearing. The more emotional the exchange became, the more valuable calmness became politically. Schiff grew visibly frustrated at times because he wasn't getting the direct confrontation he was aiming for. Bondi, meanwhile, stayed measured and refused to fully walk into the traps being laid out for her. And politically, that's often the smarter move, because voters today are tired of politicians constantly screaming at each other on television. They are tired of hearings that feel more like reality TV than governance. They are tired of every national issue becoming another endless partisan war where nobody actually solves anything. The bigger takeaway from this hearing is not simply whether one side won the exchange. It's that this moment exposed the massive disconnect between Washington political culture and what average Americans actually care about. Most people watching at home are not spending every waking hour thinking about Jack Smith or congressional drama. They're thinking about groceries, rent, safety, jobs, schools, and whether the country feels stable. And when hearings become consumed by partisan performance instead of those issues, trust keeps eroding further. At the end of the day, this exchange became symbolic of two completely different visions of government. One side believes confronting Trump publicly at every possible opportunity is necessary to protect institutions. The other side believes federal institutions themselves have become politicized and weaponized against conservatives. That divide is not going away anytime soon. But one thing is certain. Bondi refused to give Schiff the made-for-TV moment he desperately wanted, and by the end of the exchange, that frustration was impossible to miss. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and drop your thoughts in the comments.